Ground Up Construction, what is it and why should I care?
So Ground Up Construct is a web platform focused on changing the narrative about construction careers. It's really about showing people the opportunities that exist within the industry to build a career, and not just the old adage of get a job in construction and dig ditches, but succession planning and training and building a lifelong career to really better our cities and our communities.
Right. So I didn't understand a word you said. So, so you're not a construction company.
No, we do not build anything other than careers.
Okay. Oh, I like that.
Yes.
That's good. It's catchy.
That is good.
Yeah. We don't
Should
build
be your
anything
tagline.
except careers.
That's right.
And how do you do that?
So we really are focused on highlighting companies that provide careers. There's plenty of companies in the industry that offer a paycheck, but the difference between a job and a career is something you do for a long term with potential for growth.
Right.
And so in construction for years, people stayed where they were. They were a plumber, they were a framer, and they did that for 30 years. And that's a job. That's not a career.
Right.
And so we really are focusing on companies who have a different mindset, who are offering benefits, who are offering retirement plans, who are offering training. And that'll enable us to change the narrative and change the mindset of what a construction career looks like.
So in some it's pop culture that's working against you, Josh, because that kind of classic tune, you'll never get rich digging a ditch. So how is construction adapting now to kind of this really migration away into professional services? Everybody goes to college now. Why can't you go to college and get into construction? I don't know.
Well, and you can, and we're seeing that actually. But what's happened over the past 40 years is we've said that. We've said if you don't go to college, you're not going to be successful. And so college is the path. College is the path. And that really pushed a lot of people to those higher education schools. But then they got into college and they got into a degree they didn't really want to do, got a bunch of debt, and then it's not what I want to do.
Right.
And so then a lot of those turned into construction. And so we've seen that transition from college to construction. But what we're trying to really show is that there's other pathways than college. And I think that narrative is being spoken loud and clear across our country, more so today than it was 10 years ago.
So, and then how do you get paid? How do you make a buck?
So our it's a SaaS model web platform where contractors pay to be on our site to market who they are as a company and what careers they have open and what training opportunities they have.
Okay.
And so it's completely free for the candidates or the people looking to build a career. We don't want to charge them. We really truly believe that training and building a career in construction should be funded by the company. We need people to build, and these companies don't exist without their tradespeople or trade professionals, as we call them.
Okay, and so the trade professional, how much can you? But I guess that's how much can you make if you go into the trades?
Well, it's the sky's the limit, if you ask me.
It's a decent earning. Yeah, no, really, seriously, decent earnings.
Yeah, I mean,
especially start out.
There's entry-level positions that we have on our platform now that are paying entry-level, no experience, $15 an hour, plus full paid benefits, plus 401k. When you add all of that up to a total compensation, you're making somewhere around $45,000-$50,000 a year with no experience, just to start.
So, okay, and then what can that grow to?
Well, that's up to you, right? It's how much training you can get and how far you want to take your career, but entrepreneurship is probably the most successful part of construction. Is that after 4 years of experience in most states, you get your license, you go start your own company if you want.
Well, because that's kind of where I thought you were going, Josh. In studio, Josh Munns from Ground Up Construct, or Construct or Construction?
Construct, yeah.
Construct. Ground Up Construct, and talking kind of about how the trades are morphing and adapting, trying to find workers, right? But people aren't just wanting to go, kind of for a dead end career. They're wanting more. They want to know how to grow. And I think one of the things I've said on this show often is really entrepreneurship is the middle class. It's very difficult. I don't care what genre you're in, unless you're in professional services. To get to a true middle class, and it doesn't matter if you're work in a factory. It doesn't matter if you're a professional teacher. And that's good. But if in terms of really being able to grow some wealth, to your point, Josh, is you've got to kind of put on the entrepreneur hat and figure all those things out.
Well, you can, but we have plenty of examples of people who've come into the industry with no experience, and within 15 years have a very good 401k, full paid benefits, and are making well into $80,000-$90,000 a year, and
right.
that's a very good living.
Wait, after how long?
After 10-15 years.
Wow.
I mean, that's starting young. So imagine you're 28 or 30 if you started when you're 18,
right?
And now you're making close to $80,000 a year. And I have plenty of examples that were in our company making that kind of money.
Yeah.
And these guys all started when they were 18. I mean, I have guys who worked for us for 20 years who are just now turning 40 and making into 6 figures as management.
Right. Which is good.
Yeah, it's very good.
It's the industry.
So, Katrina, as we talk about the construction industry, obviously you've been around it.
Yeah.
What are the prospects for all things construction?
It's really good. Right now, it's very good. The market is really good for acquisitions. People are looking for construction companies to buy because they want to buy people. Mm-hmm. So that's the easiest way to grow.
Do you realize how bad that sounds? That sounds like something I would say.
It does sound like something you would say. Oh my gosh, you're rubbing off on me. Oh no.
You just want to buy people.
They're buying employees. Excuse me.
You're acquiring employees.
They're acquiring employees. Yes.
You're buying people.
But those industries, there's a lot of plumbing companies. We see a lot of plumbing companies making really, really good money, $300,000-$400,000 net to the owner. And then they're looking to sell, at the end of their career. The problem is there's not a lot of people up and coming in the industry. And that is changing. I think we'll see changes in that over the next 10 years. But
So how do you attract people, Josh, into the industry, I guess? Because that seems like actually, I'd say I think every business vertical has the same problem. How do you identify people to enter into the trades?
Well, I would agree. Construction's no different than, say, manufacturing or what Panasonic and Tesla's doing. But look what Panasonic's done. Panasonic has filled TMCC with training classes because they're saying, hey, come get trained, and you're guaranteed a salary, you're guaranteed benefits, and here's a career. Construction has never done that. Construction says, hey, we're hiring and we want 10 years experience. That message doesn't resonate with people who are looking to build a career.
So who are the people that should be thinking about jumping into the trades? Are they just high school students not wanting to go to college? Where's the low-hanging fruit? Where do the people that really, this could be a game changer for them? Who might those people be?
Well, I think it's anybody who doesn't want to sit behind a desk every day. Construction isn't digging ditches anymore. Construction has changed to, full modular facilities where you're working in a facility, building a house in a warehouse. Construction has changed to where you're running big, heavy equipment with GPS and using robotics. I mean, it's not just digging ditches. So it's kind of opened up to anybody that is interested in building and creating. If you like to stand back at the end of the day and see what you've created, then it's for you, because that's what you get out of construction. Is you have to say, I built that. Look what I put together.
Well, and I guess that's what I'm thinking though is like what about hiring criminals? Could that be a potential source for people to kind of get skilled? Well,
that's been, in my opinion, probably the biggest downfall of our industry is that we've always said construction's a consolidation prize. If you went to jail, if you didn't do good in school, we'll take you, come to construction. And that, I think, has hurt our industry the most, because most of these training programs, like companies like HBI and NCCER, who we're actually affiliated with, they focus on correctional facilities. And I think that's a great service to do for our community, but it's not solving the problem. Construction is a great career for anybody, not because you went to jail.
They actually can't get a contractor's license later, right? No. If you have a criminal record.
It takes time.
You can't have a felony.
Yeah, it takes time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
I mean, you're dealing with people's money.
I mean, but I wonder if, if you just identified, certain places that had high unemployment, which used to be my favorite place on the planet, Puerto Rico, but now their unemployment's down to nothing, so it's the same problem.
Yeah.
So,
but I think it's changing the narrative with the parents. We did a career fair in Truckee last year, and one of the most successful builders, and I won't name his name, his kid was there, and his kid came to us and said, "Oh, my dad said I can't go into construction." Now, this guy has a successful business building multi-million-dollar homes, making millions of dollars a year, and he said, "No, kid, you're not going to construction." And so that's this mindset around what does construction truly look like? And that's the issue that we have, is that narrative. And so we're really focusing our messaging towards parents, towards teachers, and saying, hey, look at this differently. Look at the examples that exist.
It's a good career.
And start talking to kids early on, because kids out of high school, they are low hanging fruit. There's a good opportunity.
Yeah, no, that's interesting as we talk about all things construction with Josh Munns, founder of Ground Up Construct, and Katrina Lofton from M&A Business Advisors. Well, let's do this when we come back. Let's kind of continue this discussion about how to identify workforce for the construction industry and maybe what the prospects are here. And then if you decide to sell this thing, what's it all worth when we come back? It's called Bosma on Business. News Talk 780 KOH. Welcome back to Bosma on Business. Your host, Mike Bosma, in studio. Katrina Lofton from M&A Business Advisors, Josh Munns from Ground Up Construct, kind of talking about where is the future of construction and those things. And of course, some of the most fascinating discussions happen on break, just how it goes. So we were talking about, workforce and how do you get workforce in? And Josh, when we were heading down from Portola from our retreat, we're kind of talking about that idea, that I've had and I've shared on the shows. If you were able to provide housing for a workforce, you can import them so they can live temporarily and then go back to where they're from. And of course, I'm getting kind of knee deep into all things low-income housing credit. And I'm like, it's interesting. Now, Josh, you were talking about there's some stuff out there with Google and Microsoft. What's going on there?
Well, everything starts with construction. And so everybody likes tech, right? Everybody likes Apple. Everybody likes Microsoft. Google's one of the biggest players in the world. But it can't happen without construction. And so what happened is these companies went into Seattle and Silicon Valley and created these tech companies, and housing went through the roof. And so now none of their employees that they pay decent wages to can afford to live there.
Right.
So now they all feel guilty. And so here we are with Microsoft, donating or pledging $500 million to low-income housing in the area. And then you have Google, who announced $1 million, $1 billion.
Right.
And then Apple says, well, we'll up that. We're going to make $2.5 billion.
Yeah.
So now we have between them, $4 billion worth of money to go put into low income housing. But who's going to build it?
That's true because it doesn't always pencil. Like we had Chip Boldy talking about.
So what's interesting is, let me just tell you kind of the game here, right? So they get some good PR. We're going to put $1 billion into low income housing. So for that $1 billion, kind of the way that the math works is, a low-income housing project you can finance through HUD 85% of that project, and so that $1 billion is 15%. So it's fascinating. So they put in $1 billion, and that's 15% of the total cost for deal. The HUD non-recourse debt on the rest of it. But the secret sauce there's two types of credits. One is a 9% credit, the other is a 4% credit. We're limited in how many 9% credit deals we get because those are allocated by federal dollars. But 4% are not unlimited, but pretty close. So kind of the math on that 4% deal is a 4% deal, you get 4% of the project per year for 10 years. So that $1 billion project, when you kind of gross that up, is like really, I should break out the calculator because if I break, as I do the math on it, right? So I got $1 billion divided by 0.15. Right, so that's a $6.7 billion of total project, and for that, and I get 4% of the 6.7, and then I can sell the credits on the front end. So the math is, just to kind of shortcut it, is I invest, air quotes, invest $1 billion, and on day 2, once the project is done, I can sell my tax credits for 90% on the dollar, so I can sell them for, in essence, 32% of the deal. So, and I looked at that, I'm like, you can double your 15% equity, you essence double on day, as soon as the project goes live, you doubled. As soon as it gets certified, you can get a $2 billion check for selling your credits. And then the other thing that's even more fun about it, I was explaining this to my beautiful bride as we're talking about planning and all this stuff. And I said, so if we owed, let's just say for fun, let's say we owed $100,000 in taxes, I can buy those credits to offset that tax at 90 cents on the dollar. Okay. So I can buy $90,000 of credits and get a $100,000 tax credits. I just made $10,000 on buying the credit. So it's kind of good for everybody. There's like an open market for this stuff.
Wow.
And so that's where you're like, and when I look at Reno, why aren't we doing more low-income housing projects? right?
I think there's stuff in the works that we haven't even heard about that I've been hearing little buzz about.
Right. And, and I think those are things where we just need to change our perspective, because when I think low-income housing projects, I think the hood, right? The JECs, the projects.
No, we went over that. It's workforce housing.
It's
workforce housing.
Could you just be PC for 1 minute? Just
1 hour. Katrina, you're talking about buying people, and you're calling me non-PC.
Because it's contagious.
In studio, Katrina Lofton from M&A buys people, and Josh Munns from Ground Up Construct. But talking about the different ways to kind of fix the affordability issues in all things Northern Nevada, and I think one of the I'd say the real issues that we have is we are a tertiary market. It's just true. We're not a primary market. We're not a secondary market. We're a tertiary. So there's no capital that's looking at this market. I've read, because of all the opportunity zone work I'm doing, different prospectuses from different people, and by and large, the people that are here are interested in here. But outside capital, it's and like Chip was able to get some outside capital in. I know Blake has it. It's it's a harder sell because people don't really understand the market.
Yeah.
Right? It's a smaller market, and I think that's where if we were able to really kind of figure this out, we can. If we had more population base, at least to get into be a secondary market.
Yeah.
We would attract more capital.
Are we not on our way?
Right.
Are we not working our way towards that secondary? I mean, with all the growth we've had.
Unfortunately, the growth is still the math that I did, Josh, is I think we need over 1 million people to get into the secondary market.
I think you're right.
And 1.5 million to be a primary market. So, and that's double where we're at.
Yeah, and our little town can't handle that.
Actually, I don't know.
Currently.
I'm trying to be all healthy and environmentally friendly and whatnot. So don't judge the old white man riding his bike to work, but that's me. And so I drive up the backside of Airway and, by the airport. And if you think about it, does it really make sense for the airport to be smack dab in the middle of town? It really kind of bisects the city. Most places would say, hey, if we're going to have a plan of growth, let's make this. Let's not do what LA did and just sprawl out and it's a mess. There's a way to do that so that you can live around where you work. And so like Stockholm, Sweden, where you can ride your bike. I hoof it 9 miles, which is a bit of a hike. But most people would say if you lived within 3 miles of your work, biking is easy.
Yeah.
Right. It's 15 minutes.
Of course.
It takes as long to bike as it does to drive and park.
100%.
So that's where it's like, hey, if you can kind of create these clusters of kind of, high density. When I was in Paris, it was a great example. Very walkable, not a ton of traffic. And because they intentionally built that city or rebuilt it to be able to accommodate the population base. And so it just doesn't feel like that.
Yep.
So I don't know. But then when I tell people my goal for 1.5 million,
that's a lot of people here.
Then people look at me like
we're looking at you.
No, I think it's gonna. Well, I think it's gonna happen eventually. But we see the same thing. So when we have good companies come on the market, like Josh's old company actually that we sold, it's hard to get the attention of the big guys that want to acquire these companies because they don't want to be in our market. They don't know about our market. It's not on their radar.
Right.
Yeah.
So
but if we're going to grow to 1.5 million people, and we can only build 2,500 homes a year, it's going to take us eternity. Right. It's never going to happen.
You're right.
Because we can't. We built 2,500 new homes last year. Now we built a bunch more units and apartments, and we have to go vertical to get more people in this little valley we have. But it still takes people.
Yeah.
Right.
And in order to grow to those numbers, we need more land and more people.
Well, I think, it's interesting. I think the people part of it, the only thing that's limiting us on the people part is affordability.
Yep.
I think people would love to be here if they can afford it. And so I think if we had a little softening of housing, which means, like right now, construction, I'm doing some construction and it takes forever. Evidently, we have a concrete shortage.
Yes.
And so it's just like, stuff's expensive. I 2 general contractors said they wouldn't bid on my house because I paused at $400 a square. Okay, so that's where you think of it this way, right? If we are able to actually get more supply where you can actually, people aren't demanding as much comp, it equalizes so that actually prices go down, not up. And I think that's where you get into critical mass. Let's do this when we come back. Let's talk about kind of how to buy or sell your training company. It's called Bosma on Business. News Talk 780 KWH. Welcome back to Bosma on Business. Your host, Mike Bosma, talking about all things construction. In studio, Katrina Lofton from M&A Business Advisors, and Josh Munns from Ground Up Construct. Of course, during my day job, do the accounting thing, and holy hot dogs are we hopping right now. So basically, and I know that, if you look at the demographic of this show, you're probably over 50 with a lot of disposable income and are very successful. And what has gotten you there is, hey, it's the winds change. You haven't shifted with the winds, and that's worked well for you, right? When all of a sudden the tech bubble was going, you kind of stayed the course, and when all of a sudden the real estate thing was going, you stayed the course. And it's interesting now. In fact, I was at some tax training last week, and one of the things that I think the pundits would say is the tax reform is the most significant tax legislation since the 1986 overhaul. I mean, it's that impactful. And so the winds of change, really are, and I think it's actually changing the landscape of all things public accounting. I think being a local CPA, kind of hang your shingle out. It's, you and your secretary type of thing doesn't work anymore because there's just too much. There's just too much to know. You'd spend all your time learning, and so you kind of have to lever it with other professionals. It doesn't need to be this complicated, but it is. The other thing that's true is all things opportunity zones. I actually had another CPA firm of size that said, hey, I understand you're the opportunity zone guy. Yeah, and we help us navigate this thing. They're a big firm, but they're like, we have those resources to be able to help put deals together and understand kind of what they need to be sensitive to protect them so if they don't unwind a deal later and make big tax problems. So again, if you need one of those free 1-hour consults, because nobody can do taxes like CLA can. It's just true.
That's true.
786-4900, mike.bosma@claconnect.com. In studio, as I mentioned, Josh Munns from Ground Up Construct. So, Josh, how do you see? So you sold your glass business. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And then what's the passion for this, right? You said, you want to get out of construct, but in construction, what?
Well, no, I saw a need to attract more people. We grew our company. It was a family business, and we had people that worked for us for over 20 years. And they started with us early on. They learned the skills, they learned the trades, and they built a career with us. And over the last 4 years, as putting job ads on Indeed or Craigslist, we just weren't attracting the right people that had a mindset of training, and we were spending a lot of money on recruiting and not getting people that we needed.
Right.
And in my head, I was like, how am I going to continue to scale this business and continue to grow this business if I can't get more people? Because my guys are getting older now. They're getting into their mid-40s, and glass is heavy, and you can't do that forever. So I have to move guys into management. I've got to keep the succession planning going, but I need people to backfill. And we weren't able to attract them. And I saw these success stories, and I saw how it changed people's lives, and I love construction for that idea. I love the idea of coming into an industry with no experience, learning a skill or a trade, and building a business, either through entrepreneurship or building a career, and building a successful career there. And I've seen that happen, and we just need a better story to tell, and nobody was doing it.
Right.
And so I want to tell that story about construction and tell people there's good opportunities here, and you should really consider construction for a career rather than go to college for 4 years and get a bunch of debt and then figure out you want to go into construction.
Right. Save yourself the debt. So what's the training component for what you do? How do you deliver that training? Why does it matter? So
I truly believe that, K through 12 is not going to solve this issue for us. Kids need to get their basic K through 12 education.
Yes.
And then the next opportunity is to go to college, right? Or those vocational schools. And you can go to a 2-year vocational school and learn a little bit about construction, but they're kind of sporadic and they're not as good as they could be around the country. Mm-hmm. So I really believe that every construction company is a trade school and needs to be treated as such. Our glass company was a trade school. We taught people a trade in our company that started off making screens that were now professional glazers over time. But we did it the old way, like, hey, go learn. And that works, but it's not working anymore. This next generation really wants a career path. They want to see succession planning. They want to know they're learning something. And so we became an accredited training sponsor for NCCER, which is National Construction Curriculum Education and Research.
Okay.
It's a long acronym.
Yes, it is.
And I remembered it, so I'm proud of myself for that one. But so they have a curriculum that's nationally recognized in all 50 states that sets training up. And so our goal is to set training up in companies and to let these construction companies be the trade schools that they are. Because I think the best training you're going to get is on the job while you're making money, working with a company that'll take care of you.
But it really is that mix of practical on the job, swinging a hammer, but also the technical part behind it, right? Because that's where, it's funny. The running joke is, right? If if you're supposed to be, if you're a framer, you're supposed to be 12 inches on center or whatever, and and it's hit and miss, right?
Yeah.
So, and I've got some of those modular companies that you're talking about. And kind of like where you can actually get it so that, it's really robotics, right?
Yep.
Where you're like, okay, we know that it's constructed the way that it's spec'd to, but somebody has to know what the specs are, right? And so you're really teaching the specifications and the technical part of building while they're building.
Exactly.
Right?
So there is an online component as well. So if you treat your construction company as a trade school and you really think about that, you start developing people, then you start growing your business for long term. But if you're just raising your hand and saying, I want guys with 10 years experience, you're not helping the industry, you're not solving the problem.
Right.
So if you can treat your company like a trade school and bring people in and teach them on the job, we also have the online backup with that where they can go online and learn the technical parts of construction. So it's a two-phased approach, but I believe it has to happen in the companies. I don't think trade schools, I don't think vocational is going to be the answer.
Right.
I just don't.
So, and didn't kind of the union provide that at some juncture where you went to work for, and you'd be a union shop and they'd have kind of these apprenticeships that you'd work through? And is that still in play or is that not around anymore?
100%. The unions did a good job early on. And when they first started, they had the right mindset. They wanted to protect their employers. They wanted to make sure they had good benefits and make sure they were safe. And we needed the unions early on because construction was not safe early on. But the unions have done a really bad job of forming that bond with their employees and keeping people interested. They're declining every year. They're seeing a decline every year. And there's multiple reasons for it, but I think the biggest reason is when you work for the union, you work for the union. When you work for a company, you work for a team and you work for them. And I think the idea of working for a company, a team is more appealing to people than working and just jumping from company to company. Right. And in the union, if you go to company A and the owner doesn't like you, then you're off the job the next day.
Right.
And so you don't have that succession planning, that growth, that team building that this next generation really wants.
Well, I'll tell you, it resonates, Josh, because I think what people are looking for is a path. You mentioned it earlier, and to be able to kind of say, hey, you're going to be able to advance and you'll be in the field, and then you'll be supervising the field, and then you'll be supervising multiple locations as you progress in your career, and kind of more to manage.
Yep.
So Katrina, interesting business model.
It is. Yeah, I love it.
So, when Josh hires you to sell this one next time, how do you value it?
This one is easier than the construction one because it doesn't have the ups and downs, and it doesn't have all the accounting stuff we were talking the other day about. Do you use accrual or do you use cash accounting in our lunch and learn? So it may still have the same components, but it's easier to find a buyer for this because you don't need the expertise that you do in a construction company or the licensing. So, So I love his new business model, and I think it's really going to be great for the industry too.
So no, that's cool. Interesting. Of course, other things that are popping around in my head. You mentioned the lunch and learn that you did. You did a great job talking about company valuation. Next one coming up on November 21st is the ABCs of Budgeting by our own Rich Tower. He's kind of going through a deeper dive into how to make the budget magic happen. You can go to our Facebook page and register for that. It is, of course, free. And then other things. CLA's been named the Financial Times 300 top registered investment advisors. So,
awesome.
One of the things that's true, I just believe it to my core. If you're thinking out there, I'm going to start a business, I'm going to start a construction business. You got to talk to me first, man, because like this thing, you can look it up, 1202 qualified small business stock. There's reasons that you may want to consider, an alternative form of ownership in or type of company when you set up your company, but you got to do it from day one. You can't fix it later.
Does that work when you buy one too?
No.
Oh,
well, actually, I would say this.
Why not?
It does, but as long as you buy the assets,
yeah,
right?
which is 90%.
Which is 90% of deals.
Yeah.
But yeah, so basically, a 1202 company is you put the cash in, get the thing going, up to $10 million of value, and basically you can get 100% tax free if you hold it for 5 years, right? You sell the stock in that case.
So great for us. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Awesome.
So and there's and it's actually an interesting one where I'm like, who should own the company? Should it be you or should it be your self-directed IRA? Trying to maybe kind of get smart on those things. So especially if you're older, kind of with a horizon to get to retirement, it really matters. I was doing some modeling for folks, and they have a sell, they sell their business, and okay, what am I going to do with the cash? What am I going to do with the capital? Well, let's make sure we talk before you set the company up, because you need to know and that's why you kind of have to work with Katrina on do these companies sell stock, or they asset deals, and then that'll impact how you set that company up.
Because the most important thing is how much money you retain when you sell it, not what you sell it for.
No truer words ever spoken. So, as I mentioned, Josh Munns, founder of Ground Up Construct. I guess it kind of always goes back to the how do you find people?
Yeah, that's the question, right? How do you attract and find people for your company? And I think it comes down to a different approach. For years, we used to market ourselves as an open job, but it's a different conversation now. It's a different generation, and understanding how to connect with that generation is really key, because millennials are going to be 40 this year.
Right, and it's time. They're moving out of their parents' basements in droves. So they're looking for a way to make a buck quickly, because they've squandered the first half of their life. So when you come back, the number one thing when you sell your construction company, you heard it here and only here, we call it Bosma on Business. News Talk 780. Welcome back, Bosma on Business. Your host, Mike Bosma. If you need one of those free 1-hour consults, 786-4900 or mike.bosma@claconnect.com. In studio, Katrina Lofton from M&A Business Advisors and Josh Munns from Ground Up Construct. We leave our listeners with the number one thing. I'm a fan of, begin with the end in mind when you sell the thing. When you sell your construction company, what's the big idea? What's the big picture? What do you got to remember, Katrina?
I'm such a planner, and Josh is one of my favorite clients because he planned. So he brought the company to market. He realized he wasn't ready, took it off the market, and then took a step back and planned. And I think at the end of it, we had a 3-year relationship there, which is the right way to do it. Mm-hmm. And they, maximize their exits. So I would just say you have to plan. I mean, it's so critical.
Well, I think it's if you're gonna build a business, and I learned this probably the hard way, and that's how we learn most things, is that you should be building a business that you can work on and not in. And if you can work on your business, it's able to be sold, right? But if you're working in your business every single day, then who's going to take over when you leave? Right. And so the planning and putting the things in place, again, comes down to people. If you could put the right people in the right place and structure your business so that you can step back as the owner and work on it, you can sell it any day. Right. So it is that planning. It is making sure you have the right people in the right place, and that is what will make any business successful, but also attractive for acquisition.
Absolutely.
Right, because ultimately the owner is going to be around for a bit, and then it's going to have to run on its own. So if it can be self-sufficient, that's always better. Of course, I'm a fan, consulting with a lot of construction companies, and I would say, be able to invest in that next generation, kind of your point, Josh, but also understand it's going to cost a buck or two, right? It's like, well, I'm not going to make as much money, and that's true, and you don't need to.
It'll be worth it.
Right, it'll be worth it, because ultimately, if you can, entrepreneurs, they create, they invent every day, and if you can get out of the day-to-day and have somebody running it, so, I mean, it
affects your multiple.
It affects your multiple. Exactly. Yeah. You're gonna make what you paid that person back plus, so you can be able to get a return on that.
Absolutely.
Investment. Of course, if you need to go back to any of our prior shows, you can go to bosmaonbusiness.com or my Facebook page. Last week was Karen Nichols from Red Carpet Events. That was Yeah.
That's a good show.
We call it a Bosma-sized wedding.
Yeah, right.
The phrase that pays. Next week's show, Ruby Russell from Befitted Bedding, a new concept in bedding.
Nice.
Hey, we also have the Lunch and Learn that I did, I think, on Bosma on Business.
Oh, we do
the
have the
Facebook
lunch
page.
Right,
so if you missed it,
you want to know about all things valuation, we can make that magic happen. So yeah, it's always fun. So Josh, I appreciate you sharing your journey.
Thank you.
Thank
just
you,
kind of excited to see the next things that come out and how the construction trades happen in Northern Nevada. Of course, random fact. What is the largest radio telescope in the world?
No clue.
No idea.
Rishabo Observatory, 790,000 square feet collecting area, 1,000 foot in diameter.
Why do we need
Puerto
this
Rico.
useless information?
In Puerto Rico.
Of course
So
it is.
all the answers lead to Puerto Rico. I should pay my Puerto Rican charity but
You
Josh, I'm telling
should.
you recruit from
You
Puerto
should.
Rico.
That's
If
not
we
a bad
can find
idea.
the housing part of that equation, I think they're American citizens. So Katrina's rolling her eyes at me, and that's painful. Okay, next week, as I mentioned, Ruby Russell, Befitted Bedding. And, of course, if you need a free 1-hour consult, 786-4900 or mike.bosma at claconnect.com. Until next week, we call it adieu. It's Bosma on Business. News Talk 780 KOH.